Yeah, as I'm saying, this is going to be... There's lots of stories like this where we kind of suspect that there was a whole religion, a whole deep meaning in society connected around the story, that lives were lived around the story. This one we know for absolute fact that that was the case. This was the center of a religion for as long as Christianity was a religion. And the rites of the religion and quite likely large parts of the story were secret and lost. So what I'm going to tell is going to be kind of like that bit in a 70s sci-fi book where you read somebody on a distant planet in the future who's talking about the story of how Jesus fought Hitler or something like that. Somebody from when this story was first, certainly from when it was first written down, hearing what I say would probably be laughing. That said, I'll start. I would tell the story of Demeter, the blazing, the awesome goddess, and of her girl. Now Demeter had a daughter, one daughter who she loved more than many have loved a brace of fine sons. And this daughter and her mother, they were of one mind, such that it was okay for the mother to be doing whatever, to be working, to be doing whatever, while her daughter was walking in the meadows above the sea, under the waterfall, with her friends, and picking flowers. And her friends were fairies, nymphs, daughters of the ocean that rings the world around, the wild, the unbroken, the white horse girl, amber and violet and rosy face, fair flowing, fast flowing, and forth shining. The riches, the sky girl, the shepherdess, the honey, the healer, the hallelujah, the red one, the gold one, the milk white breath, fortune, and glamour, and freezing water. The fairies that walk with Demeter's daughter as she gathers flowers in the folds of her dress. And besides that, there were walking with her in the meadow the huntress and the warrior, Artemis and Athena, the two great protectors of girls. So this is a girl who is a grown girl, but very much in her world a girl. And she's very well loved, and she is very well protected. But the earth has many roads. And she walks down those roads, slowly further away, far away from her mother, and far away as well from her friends, from her protectors, until she comes to a place where many roads meet. And in that place, she finds a flower which she has not seen before. And this flower, maybe, in fact, almost certainly, all of you have had at some point a time when you were walking out in nature and you've seen something that's so alive that the whole day revolves around it. And maybe great tranches of your life, without you even understanding, resolve around this image of this glowing thing. And she, the girl, at that time, in that moment of seeing that flower, she felt that the earth and the sea were laughing with her. And it had 100 heads, each face shining and pale with a fiery mouth in the center. and she bent down to pick it. Now the flower is a trap. The flower is a trap. And the person that set the trap has no name in this story other than Gaia, the earth herself. And as the girl picks the flowers and puts them into the folds of her dress, the earth where the flower is rooted begins to crumble. And it begins to split, and it begins to crack, and it begins to yawn. And she is standing with her bare feet on the edge of a chasm, reaching down, 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 farther than she has ever thought about before into the darkness. And down there in the darkness beneath her, something is moving. Now what's moving down in the darkness is black and powerful, and it's coming up towards her fast. And before long, she can see what it is. And it's a chariot. It's a golden chariot that is drawn by black, jet black, powerful horses. And in the chariot is standing one who has many names. The silent one. The dark lord of death, Hades. And there is a light in his eyes that you would not expect to find there. And what happens next happens very, very quickly, because the chariot is on the grass and the strong arm of Hades is around her waist and she is over his shoulders and the chariot is off. And she drops her flowers and she cries. She cries, but she does not scream. And she's so young, and it's happened so fast, that she maybe doesn't know what is happening. But in any case, she can still see the world. The chariot rides fast across the earth. And she can see the lakes of swans. She can see the stinking marshes that they ride through. She can see the city between two bays and its high towers. And while she sees these things, she does not scream. And then ahead of her, she can see a pool. Now, in this pool, there is one last fairy, one last nymph, and her name is Cyan, like the colour. And Cyan, she does know exactly what is going on. She has seen the chariot approaching, and she's scared. Rightfully scared, because she's only a nymph, and Hades is a god, and a powerful god, a mighty one. But she stands up. She stands up in her pool and she shouts out, "Stop, stop." And she has this whole speech prepared. And it's about consent. And he runs her down. He runs her down and she melts into the waters of the pool. And she never speaks again. Although the pool, I can tell you, is still there. And it still is the colour that bears her name. And the plants that grow around it are papyrus. Anyway, the chariot rides through the water, defiles the pool, and heads towards the yawning mouth of the underworld. And it may be, I don't know, it may be that the girl sees there in that cavern something of what's ahead of her, that she sees there the black and bubbling thing that guards the entrance to the underworld. It may just be that as they ride under the roof, she no longer sees the world that she's grown up in. But however it is at that moment that she screams. and mountains ring with it. And those 21 fairies, her friends who were in the meadow, then they hear it and they scatter across the world searching for her. And her mother hears it. Now, the moment that Demeter hears her daughter cry, she immediately tears off her crown and flings it aside, and she takes on a black robe, and she goes to the place, and she sees the tracks of the chariot there, but a herd of pigs has crossed the path of the chariot and obliterated the tracks, and she can't follow. She asks, of course, the nymphs. She asks the two goddesses, the two guardian goddesses. She asks everyone. Ploughman and shepherd, evening and morning. She asks all the birds. And of course, she asks Zeus. Zeus is the girl's father. And he's also Demeter's brother, which is odd, but it's apparently okay if you're an Olympian god. And Zeus, of course, can see all that happens in the world, but he says, no, I'm sorry. It's very unfortunate, but at that time, I happened to be in my temple receiving offerings, and I didn't see what happened. And Zeus does not lie. Exactly. But Demeter can't help feeling that people aren't telling her everything. All she knows for sure is that her daughter is gone and that her daughter is suffering. And she's lost. And she wanders for 9 days across the earth. She wanders like a bird in her black cloak. She doesn't eat. She doesn't drink. She doesn't wash. And these things are at least as hard for a goddess as they are for us, I think. Nine days with no direction and no hope. And then on the morning of the 10th day, and I forgot to mention that for these 9 days, Demeter has made for herself 2 torches of pine. And on the morning of the 10th day, as it's dawning, she sees coming over the brow of the world towards her somebody else who is also carrying 2 torches of pine. And this person is somebody that she knows, but someone that maybe she doesn't know entirely what to make of. It's another goddess, Hecate, a powerful goddess with dominion in all 3 kingdoms of the world, but who is not of her family, who's not an Olympian. But when Hecate comes and approaches Demeter, her voice is full of kindness. She says, Demeter, what has happened? Who has taken Persephone? Because the girl has a name. I heard her crying, and this was the soonest I could come. Now, Hecate has heard not just the scream that Demeter also heard, but she heard the crying of Persephone when Hades first abducted her. But she didn't see anything. And Demeter says nothing at all. She does not break her silence. But she follows where Hecate leads. And one or other of them, or both together, they know that if Hecate didn't see it, there is somebody who did. And together, the 2 goddesses climb the sky. Now in the sky, there is a road, and Hecate, who is the goddess in the road, stands in that road with Demeter. And down that road, which is a well-worn track, there comes a chariot. And this chariot also is gold. Gold and chrysolite. But the horses that draw the chariot are not black, they are fire. Their names are the flame and the blaze and the burning and the turning of the sky. And those horses with that chariot, they charge towards the two goddesses who stand in the road and do not move. And the chariot stops. This time, the chariot stops. The sun stops in the sky. Those horses that Zeus himself can't handle are reined in. And in the chariot is someone whose face it hurts to look at, but who sees everything in the world below. And in this time, for the first time in 10 days, Demeter speaks and she says, "Great sun, great Helios, if you have any respect for me at all, if anything I have done has won me honor in your eyes, tell me, for I know you know. Where is my girl?" And if you can imagine it, there passes across the great face of the sun awkwardness. This is an awkward moment for him. He had to stop, and he really did not want to. And he looks at Demeter and he says, okay, of course I respect you. And you know what? I feel sorry for you. You have to know that this is nobody's fault but Zeus, because this was his idea. And he decided that your daughter should be married to his brother. You know who I mean, you know. The one who receives many guests. The one who makes many signs. And Demeter does know who he means. And when she hears the news, there is born in her a grief so terrible. It is black and it bubbles, and the bubbles are heads, and the heads are howling. And Helios keeps on talking. He says, it's not that bad. He's a good match. He is a great lord. He rules a third of the cosmos. Anyone would be honored to have him as a son-in-law. You shouldn't. And as he's saying this, Demeter falls from the world of the gods. In her black robe, she wanders, for nobody knows how long, on the margins of the human world. Hi, Rowan. Anyway, I should go on. Should I go on? Okay. So there is a city. There is a city, a rocky citadel above the sea, and its name is Eleusis. And outside this city, there is a well, and the name of the well is the place of the girls. And they come down to this well, 4 girls, and their names are Kalidaike, Klesidaike, Demo, and Kalithoe. Nice girls. They're the son of a man who, it's not entirely official, but he's probably the king. Certainly he's a big leader in the city. So they're kind of princesses. And they come down to the well and they see sitting there what appears to be an old woman in a black robe. And they've never seen her before in their lives. And they, as I say, because they're nice girls and well brought up, they address this old woman in the way that it is proper to address an old lady who you've never seen before. They say, "Old woman!" Different times. Different times. "You who are old among humans, tell us, what is your name? And where are you from?" And they are actually being very polite. They have this suspicion that this is somebody who has fallen on hard times. And they say, "Why is it that you're sitting here on the outside of our city, but you don't come in? Because our city, this city, Eleusis, this is a place that respects women. This is a good place, particularly for an older woman. And there are many things, many roles that you could do in the city. For example, you could be a nanny, or a chambermaid, or a housekeeper, or a teacher. So tell us who you are." Now, for some reason, at this time in Greece, if you want to make up a fake identity, you say that you come from Crete and you're abducted by pirates. And this is what the woman says. She says, "My name is Doso. I'm from Crete, abducted by pirates, escaped from the pirates, and now I have no idea where I am. But," and she looks at the girls, "but thank you. And charis to you, friendship to you, and joy. May you get for yourselves strong and lusty husbands and bear many, many children as your parents would wish." Different times. That's polite. And you know what? Actually, that sounds good. I could be a chambermaid. I could come into the city and turn down the corners of the royal bed in the royal apartments. I could be a housekeeper. I could teach. I have lots to teach. Or I could be a nanny. I could hold a child in my arms again. I could hold a child in my arms again. And the girls, one of the girls, Kalidaike, she steps forward, and there's something about this one. When she spoke, there was something in her voice, and she says, "I am sure that if you went to the house of any of the men in the city, any of the great men in the city, for example, there's Duxios the horseman, there's Dolikos of the games, there's Eumolpus the dancer, there's Treptolemos the farmer, and there's our father, of course, Kilios, the kind of the king. If you went to any of these houses, I am sure they would welcome you because, to be honest, you look like a goddess." Now, Kalidaike, she doesn't suspect. She's just being nice, I think. But she says, "And actually, if you come to our house, we've got a new baby brother. His name is Demephon. It was completely unexpected. Our mother is over the moon, but she's also beside herself, and she's looking for a nanny. She's desperate for a nanny. And please, let us go back and ask our mother if you can come." And this old woman, Doso by the well, she nods once in assent. And these four girls, they go back up with their big jars of water, which was why they came to the well. The big jars of water, they go up looking very stately and magnificent, carrying the jars of water on their heads, but they run down like young heifers in springtime with their hair trailing behind them, and they grab her by the hands and they say, "Come, come, come. Mum says you can stay. Come back to our house." And they race ahead of her up the path, but her head is bowed under her black cloak and her steps are heavy. And if the girls had looked, they might have seen that the feet on the path were not the feet of an old woman. But it is hard for human beings to see the gods. But when she arrives at the palace and she steps over the threshold into the hall where the queen, whose name is Metaneira, is sitting with her little boy Demeter, when she steps over the threshold, the queen suddenly sees, for an instant, not an old woman, but someone whose head touches the ceiling, whose face blazes with light as bright as lightning, whose long golden hair trails down to the floor. And without saying anything at all, without thinking about it, she stands up, takes the baby, and she offers her throne to the goddess. And the goddess just stands there. What is it like to be reminded that you're a goddess, to be shown the appropriate honors due to a goddess, but to know in that moment that you are not a happy goddess? She's full of a great grief and anguish over the fate of her daughter, who she can never see again. But Metaneira the queen was not the only person in that hall who saw that vision. And there was somebody else, apart from the girls and the queen and the boy. There is an older woman in the room, and her name is Iambe. And Iambe takes a stool, not a throne, a stool, but she puts a very nice fleece over it. And when Doso does not sit down, she says, and honestly, I wonder if anybody who does not know what she says would guess this, because this is definitely not what I would do. She says, "You look like a lady who is in need of a good dick joke." Okay, the jokes have not survived. I'm sorry, I'm literally cribbing from a hymn sheet here. The jokes haven't survived. There are plenty of genuine ancient Greek dick jokes out there, but they need loads of notes to done. But this is what she does. She starts telling these completely inappropriate jokes, and she keeps going. And Dosa is just standing there. And there, I mean, this takes courage. If you meet an Olympian goddess and you want to not be turned into a spider or something, you can do what Metaneira does and give her your throne. But to actually bring healing, just keep telling the jokes to this utterly implacable goddess until she starts to smile. And she does. She starts to smile. And she sits on the stool. And the queen starts to remember what is going on here, who she is. This is the queen, this is her house. And she says, "Can we get you anything? Can we get you some wine?" And Dosa says, "I'm sorry, I can't take wine for religious reasons. Do you have any pennyroyal tea, pennyroyal and barley tea?" And the queen says, "I don't think so." Dosa says, "Well, Your Majesty, this is what you do. You take a cup of ground barley and you take pennyroyal. You know pennyroyal? It's a bit like mint. Do you have some in the kitchen?" And the queen says, "I'm not sure. I don't have the recipe, and there's been a lot of speculation about what exactly is in it." But the queen leaves herself, goes to the kitchen, and starts to make the tea. And this is, I think this is possibly the only part of the story that I'm fairly sure I understand. As she makes the tea, she starts to come back to herself. She remembers who she is. She is a queen. She is looking for a nanny. She walks back out into the hall. She sits down, back in her throne, and she says, "My guest, Ilsa, my daughters tell me that you have suffered much. We cannot go against the will of the gods. They have clearly dropped a great yoke on you. But what I can say is this: here is my boy, my joy of my heart, Demephon, and he needs to be nurtured to manhood. And if you would do it, I promise you that what I have, I will share with you. And no one will say that you were treated ill in my house, and you would be the envy of any other woman your age in the city. I promise you this. Courage to you. And Doso says, she says to the queen, Charis back to you and more. I know that you are worried because there is one who can cut out the roots from under a child. But I know about roots. And I know an antidote that will keep away the undercutter. So entrust your child to me. And Metanera gives Demophon, the boy, to Dosa, who takes him under her black robe and close to her breasts. But she does not feed him on milk. She feeds him on ambrosia, the food of the gods, and he inhales the sweet breath of the goddess. And when it's time to sleep, she lays him down to sleep like a log in the fire. Now, his parents know nothing of this, but they do know that the boy is doing amazingly well. He is growing up like a young god, you know, full of joy. And of course, they have a nanny, so that's all that they get to see. Full of joy, bright, beautiful, running into the throne room with his toys, charging about. You know, I know what this is like at the moment. Little golden-haired one who I can't see right now. The other day, he just came into the kitchen with a cardboard box on his head going, I'm a wizard, I'm a wizard, I'm a wizard, I'm a wizard. I just laughed for ages. I could see no reason to stop laughing. Anyway, everything's lovely. Everything's fine in this house. Until one night, you know, this is the human world and something is going to go wrong. One night, the queen can't sleep. She can't sleep and she wakes up and she takes it into her head that she wants to see her little boy. And she walks down the corridors of the palace until she comes to the nursery and she opens the door and she looks in and there she sees an old woman in a black cloak in front of the fire and the baby on the fire. And she says, oh no, my baby, Demophon, what is happening to you? Why has this woman put you on the fire? Who is she? This stranger? Oh no, I'm really upset about this. This is really bad. This is terrible. Which, under the circumstances, is a fairly understated reaction, I feel. Demeter does not think so. Stupid humans, ignorant, heedless. You do not know the difference between good fortune and bad. Fine. She takes the baby, she lifts him from the fire, she drops him on the floor where he immediately begins to cry. I would have made your son immortal, but now I swear on the waters of the Styx that he will die. And that's an unbreakable oath. All right. He will die. He will die, but he will be forever remembered. There will be great games held in his honor every year in this city. Fine? You wanted to know who I am, I will tell you. And once again, Metanera, the queen, she saw that vision that she'd seen for an instant when the goddess stepped over her threshold. A being whose head touches the ceiling, whose face blazes like lightning and does not stop. And she says, I am Demeter, the greatest gift to gods and humans. You know what? You can build me a fucking temple. Big one. Steep walls above the Acropolis on a nice hill overlooking the Well of the Dancers. And I'll tell you later what rites you will perform in this temple to honor me by. And she leaves. And when she steps out of the room, the queen falls over. The baby does not stop crying. His sisters rush in. One of the girls goes to help her mother. One goes to stoke the fire, which is interesting. And the other two, one goes to comfort the baby, but the baby will not stop crying. And one goes to fetch their father. They swap because the baby will not stop crying. And I have to say that for all I know, which admittedly is not very much, he's crying yet. But Helios, the king, he comes in and he sees his wife on the floor, and he does the only thing that a man does in this entire story, and he listens to his wife. It is a crucial act. He listens to her, and he listens through her to what the goddess has said, and he knows that this is something he has to take extremely seriously. And the construction of the temple begins the next day. Can everyone still hear me okay? They build the temple, and when the temple is finished, the goddess appears, and she comes in, she goes inside, she's still wearing her black robe, she sits in the corner, and she does nothing. She still hasn't told them what the rites are to perform in the temple. So, they light some incense. It's worth a try. The temple is empty, but for a figure in a black robe who will say nothing. Your child has been cursed with death. Nothing makes sense anymore, light some incense. Worth a try. But nothing seems to make any difference, and after a while, life continues. In the fields around Eleusis. In the fields around Eleusis, the oxen draw the plows, and the plows break the soil, and the farmers drop the golden grain into the furrows, and then nothing happens at all. Nothing happens. Because she's not sulking in there. By her power, not only in Eleusis, but across the world, the seeds don't grow. So I've got like a veg patch that I don't really look after with a few Jerusalem artichokes in it that I don't really need, and we get a delivery from the organic delivery service every Monday. I have no connect. I do not know what this is like. This is famine. This isn't hunger or malnourishment, which there's a huge amount of in the world today. Famine. This is utter starvation. It takes the children first. It takes the elderly, it takes the sick, but it starts to take the rich as well, and after a while, even the God Spirit. Because there's a lot of prayers at first, but people become to realize, rightly, that the gods cannot do anything about this. And anyway, there is no energy left to pray, then there is nothing left to sacrifice. It's very clear what's at stake here. Demeter can and will kill everybody. through starvation. And she's not going to pull Zeus off his throne. Nobody can do that. It's been tried. She's going to cut the roots out from under Olympus. So, the rainbow. The rainbow falls, and there in the temple is a messenger, an angel, Iris, with her golden wings. And the goddess Iris addresses the goddess Demeter, and she says, I come from Zeus, and I invite you to ascend back up to Olympus, where you belong. Let not these words, which come from Zeus himself, fail to lead to action. And Demeter says nothing. And maybe, Zeus assumes, understandably perhaps, that what's going on here is that she just doesn't feel respected. She's shown her power. Maybe they've taken her for granted up to this point. And maybe what she really needs, hi there, maybe what she really needs is a bit of respect, a promotion. So he sends down, one after another, all the gods of Olympus to her temple, and they offer her all the honors that they can think of. And we don't have a record of these conversations, but we know that they are heated. And they all come back, and they all report the same thing. These are Demeter's terms. I want my girl back. 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 And finally, the impossible happens. The word of Zeus, which is law, is broken. And Zeus says, fine. Bring her back. And the moment he says that, there is somebody who is also a messenger of Zeus, but a very different one. The cattle rustler, turtle murderer, watchman killer, the one with the broad-brimmed hat and the golden wand, the one with the winged sandals, the one who can go anywhere, Quicksilver, Hermes, the trickster. And Hermes, in a flash, is in the underworld. And walking through the mists, he comes. He comes to what you might think would be a throne, but there isn't a throne in the mist. There is a couch. And this is the only glimpse we get into the underworld in that story. Hermes is probably unshockable, but this is what he sees on the couch. The dark lord of death and the flower-faced girl, the high-minded one, Persephone, intertwined. Hermes doesn't waste words. He said, I come from Zeus. I'm sure you know what her mother has done. I mean, he would, right? Zeus has decreed that Persephone be let go, be sent back to the world above to join her mother. Please do not disobey the words of Zeus. And Hades smiles with his eyebrows. He says, of course you must go. You must go to your mother. And the face of Persephone that had been full of anguish at the pain, at the whatever indignities she has suffered in the underworld, lights up, but not completely. And Hades then says exactly the same thing that Helios says. He says, don't worry, because I am not an unworthy husband, even among the Olympians. You would not be ashamed to call yourself my wife. And as my wife, you will be honored. You will be queen. You will be respected. And all people will have to fulfill your rights. Would you like to hear? Would you like to hear what will happen to them if they don't? And I'm fairly sure that the original audience of the story would know exactly what that was. But we do know that Persephone leapt away from the couch of Hades full of joy. And she ran towards where Hermes was waiting by the chariot, Hades' chariot, the same chariot that had brought her down there, but she looked back. And when she looked back, Hades was holding something out to her. Something round with ribs in, something full of rubies, sweet and sharp, and topped with a crown. The pomegranate. And she took 4 seeds. Now, on the Rarian field, which would normally be a fertile place, but now, of course, is dead and shriveled, Demeter is waiting on the steps of her temple. And the earth opens, and from the earth comes the girl, comes Persephone. And Persephone and Demeter, they run towards each other. Demeter runs like a man woman, and they embrace, and once again, they are of one mind. But Demeter knows immediately that something is not quite right. And she says, what happened? How did he trick you, the powerful one, the one who takes many guests? How did he get you to eat the food of the underworld? And Persephone said, he forced me. He forced me by his great power. I'm sorry. But when the girl is there, Demeter knows no sadness. And so that is the moment when Zeus chooses to send his 3rd messenger. And this one is not somebody that usually is a messenger, or not seen as such. Because outside of all this drama, there is a circle that is ruled by a lady, and her name in this story is nothing other than Rhea, mother of Zeus, and mother too of Demeter. And when she steps down out of the boundless ether onto the Rarian field, the seed that should be mouldering in the furrows is sprouted, is high, is ripe, is cut, is bundled by the side of the track. And the great goddess steps towards Demeter and her daughter, and she says, come now, it's time for this to end. Zeus has decreed that although Persephone has eaten of the food of the underworld, although the girl has eaten the food, she will spend 2/3 of the year up here with you and 1/3 down with her husband, Hades. And because this was the 2/3 of the year where Persephone is with Demeter, Demeter is happy. Now, says Rhea, come back up to Olympus and receive your rightful place, you and your girl. But first clear up the mess down here. And so Demeter, she goes into Eleusis, and she meets those men that we heard about before, the farmer, the horseman, the man of the games, the dancer, and the king, whose nanny she was. And she teaches them now at last the sacred rites of her temple. And the grain all across the world, it sprouts and it grows and the famine is over. And the two goddesses go back up to Olympus. But for a third of the year, the girl is in the darkness. And there she is, queen, equal of Hades, dreadful and venerable. Whoever understands this story, it is said, and I certainly do not, is blessed. And the goddesses will send into that person's home Hades. But the name that is used for Hades, because he has many names, the name that is used for Hades in this context is his other most famous name, which is Pluto. And Pluto means wealth.